Linda, are you on? Linda? No, it's probably a different number. Kathleen, I'm trying to see. Did you say that? Let me give the phone to her. Okay.
I never knew how to know. Yeah. It's just not known.
Give her 4 minutes here.
Here last month, it went real well. I just missed it. I heard it went exceptionally well.
Yeah, Jared wasn't.
I knew.
She did a very nice job. Very impressed. She did a very nice job, Jessica. Yeah, she did a wonderful job. She only made a few comments about you and how much more quickly it went. I could be wrong because I was on the phone. I may have gotten it all. That was my impression. You give her a big pat on the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I need to go back and watch the Linda, are you there? All right. We will. There. Linda?
Okay, how about now?
Great. Great.
Sorry about that. I should have gotten on that earlier.
No problem. No problem. So, welcome everyone to the November Modernization Phase 1 Advisory Board meeting. We're going to start with roll call. So, Deborah here.
Here.
Here. Carl Corning.
Here.
April Edwards.
Here.
Beth Altman.
Here.
And Linda Fugate.
Yes, sir, here.
Okay, great. Our agenda today is on the screen. We're going to have a review of the minutes. If there are any updates for our policy and decision review, we'll have that. We're going to have one additional item on the agenda. We're going to have Judy give an overview of the screen for the portal. There's been some discussion, folks that have seen the screen for the portal, so we're going to show you the screen for the portal and walk through that so you can get a feel if you have any questions. The portal is a big part of what we're pushing in Motorist Modernization for Phase 1. There's a lot of self-service things that we're hoping to offer the customers through the portal, so we're going to make sure everyone understands where we're going and what we're trying to achieve through the portal, so we're going to show that today. Then we have our regular program update, which of course Janice will give us the financial update. Kristen's going to tell us about the IV&V deficiencies, which is good news there, change requests, and then a requirements validation update. And then we have folks here from Accenture and Samadi who will also give us an update on where we are with communication. And then, of course, answer any questions that anyone has along the way. And I also forgot that we have Gary here as well. After we do the meeting minutes, we'll give him an opportunity to talk about where we are for the IV&V standpoint. So, Chris, you want to do this minute?
I don't know why.
Good afternoon. I'll review the October 13, 2015 meeting minutes. They start on page 5 in your report. First, in the welcome and introduction section, the meeting was called to order at 1:05 p.m. I facilitated the meeting on behalf of Karen Samuel, who was out of the office on business travel. In terms of roll call, the following members were present: Deb Roby, Stephen Fielder, Beth via phone, Linda via phone. Carl was also introduced as our newest member. Advisory board members that were not present also on travel were Ed Broyles and April Edwards. You can see other DHSMD members that were present listed, as well as visitors. At the bottom of page 5, we reviewed the minutes from September 8th. Those meetings were approved unanimously by the board members. Page 6, I won't go into this in great detail, but the team reviewed several items on the policy and decision document, and so the outcome of that discussion is documented on pages 6, page 7, and at the top part of page 8. I'll let you kind of scan over those things. Hopefully you've had a chance to review.
Do we want to address the item on page 8 that pertained to me getting some responses back from tax collectors? Is now the appropriate time for that?
Oh, you have an answer for us, Linda?
Yeah.
I do. I have a response from, I'm sorry, I can hardly hear you guys.
Okay. We can do that later when we get to the policy decision review. We can get an update from you at that point.
Okay.
Okay, but what we have there documented in the minutes is accurate. You don't have an issue with that. It's just that you have
no, okay. No, I'm sorry. That's fine.
Okay, all right. We'll do it at that point.
Okay, continuing on page 8 with the program update, Janice provided an update on where we are with our program spending, informing members that a budget amendment was in the process of or underway, so to release additional funding for the program. We have talked about our procurement timeline for the year, our projected procurement timeline, and we provided that as an attachment in your booklet. IV&V deficiencies, Gary provided us an updated status as of September on that report, indicating that 71 deficiency recommendations were closed, and there are 5 open, which correlate to, at that time, open deficiencies number 8 and 9. On page 9, we continued, the team, Senior BA provided a requirements validation update, telling you where things stood on behalf of the team in terms of the requirements validation activities. At the bottom of page 9 and going over to page 10, somebody provided a update, an update on organizational change management activities. She introduced Kim Kogel from Accenture and provided information on the official name for our system, which is Alliance. Other items of discussion that we mentioned, we gave an update on some outreach activities that we've done with partner agencies, including FDLE and the Department of State. And Judy supplemented that discussion, giving you a little bit more detail on the topics that were discussed on our meeting on October 12th. The meeting came to a close at 2:56 p.m., which is before our scheduled end time, I'd like to point out.
So much.
Was there a reason?
We inform members at the next meeting. Hey. On page 11 are all of the handouts that were distributed as either a part of your packet or a separate document. So at this time, I'd like to entertain any questions. And if there are any questions, I'd like to call for a motion to approve and get it on October.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, so now at this point, we're going to pull up Gary's presentation for IBM, the monthly IBM.
Terrence,
Yes.
is there not a GoToMeeting screen that I can view?
Yes, the link was in the invitation, so
Well, I've got the
maybe-
board. I've got it pulled up, but it says waiting to view Terrence Samuel's screen.
Oh,
See, I
press the middle.
The middle screen.
Yeah.
what about now?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you guys the October monthly assessment report from IBM. It's actually not due until Friday, but we pushed to get it done last night so that we can present the results today. Okay, so this is still draft mode, draft form. Hopefully it won't change that much.
Press the middle screen.
No, click on the back screen. Yeah. There you go. So the overall risk state for the program is still amber, but there's good news. We were able to close deficiency 8. So now deficiencies 1 through 8 are officially closed. The program is a little bit behind schedule, but it's within the tolerance zones that have been set up by ASC, plus or minus 10%. So that's all good news. Here's the cube. The only thing that we're waiting on organizational change management, which is deficiency D9, is we want to see a sample work breakdown structure and the project schedule that's going to start to be built out for organizational change management, incorporated into the integrated master schedule. And once we see that, that'll be the last recommendation that will address that deficiency. And hopefully that's coming soon. As you can see, this is the history of the cube. So in a span of, 4 months, you've gone from 15 ambers and 5 greens all the way down to 1 amber and 19 greens. And you were able to close 8 deficiencies. That's phenomenal. Just high level stuff. This is the dashboard that Kristen keeps, and as you can see, D9 in the lower right-hand pane, D9 only has 1 recommendation outstanding, and that's the project schedule. All the other recommendations have been closed out. So it's looking really good. This shows where the project is from a schedule perspective. So the green zone is plus or minus 10% in both schedule and cost performance. And as you can see that all the points are clustered there within the green zone. It's a slightly negative trend, but nothing worth worrying about at this point. If it starts to get a little bit more trendy in that direction, then we need to start figuring out what's going on. This is another view of how the team is doing as far as planned work versus actual work. The blue is the planned work, and the white is the work that was actually completed. And in an ideal situation, the actual work would equal the planned work, so you'd see no blue at the top. But as you can see, the blue, there is a little blue strip at the top, and it started out fairly small at the left, and it started to grow a little bit on the right. So that's indicative of the project is a little bit behind schedule. So right now they can catch up, but it's nothing to worry about at this particular point in time. That's all I really have. I mean, the rest is just supporting information. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to give you a brief program update, and then I'm going to turn over to Janice to give you an update on where we are with beginning. So we are continuing, as you know, with our requirement validation. The senior BAs will give you a little bit more detail later on in the agenda as far as where the individual teams are. As Gary mentioned, there is some slight slippage being experienced on the schedule. From an overall schedule standpoint, however, we're still on target. We tend to fluctuate a little bit as we go through the requirements validation in terms of the progress that some of the teams are making. The one week they might be a little bit behind, and they kind of use that time to catch up. So that slippage is indicative of that behavior that's happening among the teams. It has not jeopardized our ability to deliver our deliverables, so we're still on target. So it's just kind of the week-to-week fluctuation of some of the activities of the team that is reflective of the schedule slippage that we're experiencing. We actually have one change request that I'll be presenting to you in just a few minutes. But first, I'd like to defer to Janice to give us an update on program spending. As an attachment, there's 11/17.
Major change this month is you'll see the green rows that have been highlighted. Those are actually deliverables now that are completed and closed and will be paid. So it's an easier, quick snapshot when you look at the report. We are 3 deliverables behind as of the end of October that went into extra review cycles. So we expected to actually invoice them, pay those invoices out during the month of October, into November. So at the end of November, we expect to be completely current with all of our deliverables through the end of November 30th. So we're in good shape. The budget the amendment is being looked at downtown. It's been approved by the House and Senate, and now it's just going through the final stages of signature. So we should see those funds within the next couple of weeks. Questions? Very quickly.
So I won't repeat what Gary just said in terms of an IDV update. We are working to close that remaining deficiency recommendation. I've had some conversations this week with somebody and the Accenture team about our change program. So we hope to close that out in the next couple of weeks. In addition to the IVV monthly assessment report, AST, the Agency for State Technology, is finalizing their quarterly assessment report for this fiscal year. That should be finalized this week. We have seen the draft, and it is approved in the report. It indicates currently that our program is in green status, quote unquote, that we're at a low risk point at this point. The report, as I mentioned, should be published by the end of week, so that looks good. That's something that we plan to share with our executive team members once it's available, as well as with the legislative staff. Good job. The program is going in a good direction. So I'll now move over to our change request that we'd like to get your recommendation to proceed and review with the Executive Steering Committee. The actual verbiage of the change request is located on page 25. And going along with this change request, you will also see an excerpt of our project schedule. It should be a separate attachment on page 25, and a separate attachment change request. And Linda, do you want me to pull it up, or do you have access to your packet via email?
I have the 131-page packet. It goes to page 24, and then there's some recommendation status versus priority. Let me turn that down.
It's no problem. We can pull it up for you.
Communications and organizational change management update. Nope, I don't have that page. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I'd like to remind you that there are 3 activities that happen as a part of requirements validation. Number 1 is that we are refining the business requirements and the user stories. Number 2, we're making a preliminary level of effort estimate for the development of those requirements. And then number 3 is the creation of test cases based on the GROOM requirements. So as a lesson learned as a part of requirements validation, we thought it would behoove us to go ahead and start developing our test cases as well as forming some development estimates before we actually proceed with those phases. So this change request basically covers the two activities that I mentioned. It covers segmenting out the level of effort for the development work, and then segmenting out the level of effort for the testing work. So previously we had all of requirements grouped, those 3 requirements grooming activities grouped up in the schedule, you know, under a specific deliverable. While we were able to proceed with the deliverable, there was still work happening with the development of the test cases. There was still work happening with the development of the developmental estimates. And so we didn't want to lose the picture of how well we were progressing with those items. And so what we did was we parsed them out of the schedule so that we can track a little bit better how we're doing with those efforts. So on the first page of the schedule in the highlighted area starts with task ID number 1931. Those are where we parsed out the work that we'll be doing to validate the developmental estimates. So we have reviewed this with the development team, et cetera, and this will help us to see, get a better picture of will we plan to hit those targets and finish up those estimates for development. If you go over to page 2 of the schedule, in another yellow highlighted area, on the testing page is where we parsed out all of the testing tasks. So that they are organized by the functional ability team. You can see on 2116, renewal notification, test case creation and approval. You can see on 2021, financial responsibility, et cetera. So they're all grouped by the teams and the functional areas that, in the order that they plan to address. We have also validated these with Julie Larson and Ryan Gaffa, so they are committed to making this timeline work as well. So from an overall standpoint, we hope that this will help us track the progression of those activities better. Separating them in the schedule in this way does not impact our overall timeline for completing requirements validation, nor does it impact our overall timeline for finishing up the project as a whole. It's just a way to get more visibility on those specific activities that are part of requirements validation. Any questions about that change request?
The change is just the documentation change. It isn't changing the actual.
Correct. So what we expected in the schedule.
Person, I have a question. Is there going to be are there going to be linkages between Microsoft Project and TFS for those activities?
That's the plan. I don't think we've formulated our entire solution for how we'll make that work, but that is the plan moving forward. Yeah.
So then you would be updating the status of the activities in TFS, and then TFS would feed that status information up to Microsoft Project. So you wouldn't have to be maintaining 2 separate schedules.
I think that TFS will be a little bit more detailed than the Microsoft Project version. So we'll just have to figure out how that will be structured so that those updates can synchronize, given that, Microsoft Project version will be a little more high level and TFS will be a little bit more detailed. So we just haven't worked out the logistics of that, but yes, that is.
Okay.
That is the plan. Are there any other questions? So, since you all are an advisory body, I guess I'm just looking for kind of your recommendations for us to move this forward. Do you think this is something that we should do, should not do? Looking for your feedback there.
As long as it is manageable from the documentation standpoint, then it seems reasonable. Okay.
Great. And we have 2 other change requests that we're going to be presenting to the ESC as well. We identified those on Monday, so we haven't had a chance to turn around the documentation on those. But I'd like to give you a heads up on what they are. Change request number 4 will address the timeline for completing some of the synchronization activities. We recently purchased a tool to manage the data synchronization process between old and new systems. And so some of the setup tasks associated with that were originally scheduled to be completed in November. The team is asking for them to have time to familiarize themselves with the tool, practice using it, set it up, help, work out some of the enterprise, who owns it, kinks, et cetera. And so they are looking to complete that in April. So they want to adjust those dates. Again, this change request should not impact our ability to start development in fiscal year 16-17. It's just shifting the dates just a little bit for that activity. Change request number 5 addresses the timeline for adding Sprint 0 tasks to the schedule. So if you recall, we have the schedule denoted what we call Sprint 0. That's kind of our preparatory work before we start our actual development work. And so Accenture recently delivered the initial release plan, and in that initial release plan, they delineate specific activities that will be associated with Sprint 0. Right now, we just kind of have a placeholder. We don't have any detailed tasks in the schedule for that. So this change request will allow us to go in and add those detailed tasks associated with that Sprint 0 work. Any questions on that? All right, thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, we're going to jump around just a little bit. I apologize. They're laughing at me because they know I skipped over something on the agenda. One of the things that we have is the policy and decisions review. I don't think from a team standpoint we have any updates from the executive steering committee. They are still, their meetings are interesting as well. There's a lot of discussion, and it's amazing the number of things that you all discuss here that once it gets there are things that they just have not thought about. And those meetings usually, I don't think we've had an ESC meeting yet that hasn't run over at least an hour. And yeah, I have been present at pretty much all of them, so maybe that's the reason. But there's a lot of good.
We won't blame you.
Somebody else. There's a lot of good discussion in those meetings, but there are no updates at this time. But we do have 2 things we want to cover. Of course, Linda mentioned that she has an update for us and about one of the items I think she was assigned to look at, maybe talk to the tax collector community about. And then we're going to have Jessica. The team went to South Florida a few weeks ago, and they sort of had a modified requirements grooming session with the examiners and managers and assistant managers down in South Florida. And anybody who knows, I like to talk to the people that are actually using the system every day, and those folks really have a good handle on what they're doing and serving the public and all of that, and things that are going to make their jobs easier. So Jessica's going to give an overview of some of the things that she was told and some of the things that we'll have to consider moving forward. We're going to present those to the EC and wanted you to hear some of those ideas that they brought back as well. But first, Linda, do you want to give us an update on your items since we're down to now the policy and decision review? We're kind of jumping around the agenda. I apologize.
That's okay. Mine pertains to, I'm sorry, I'm turning off one sound. I don't hear myself talk. Mine pertains to the online application. For the 2 questions, have you been declared mentally incompetent, one for driving privilege and one for voter's registration? And I sent out an email and only got 18 responses, but out of the 18 responses, no one is using the online application as the only information that they're getting. As a matter of fact, Escambia County sent me a thing that says, according to LIR 14, we still have to ask those questions to re-verify anyway. So the tax collectors do not care that you take off those 2 questions because the majority are not using them anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes. Is there any discussion from the group?
Are we okay with getting rid of the online application altogether, or just removing
ask that.
those questions from?
I think that would have to be a different question, because I know for sure that there is one county that is very attached to the application.
Who is that?
Manatee.
Manatee. They did not respond to the email.
Okay. Yeah, I think we would have to ask the question in that manner probably to see if, you know, if people were okay with us completely doing away with the application.
Right. The email that was sent asked, not only did they ask for just those two questions, the question I said was, do you use the answers supplied on the online application, or do you just ask the questions again?
Okay.
And like I said, Manatee did not respond. Only had 18 of 67 that responded. Well, I should say 19 because my office too, but that's it.
Okay.
Do we want to wait another meeting before we close?
Well, the question is only pertaining to those two. Have you been declared incompetent? So this will answer that. But if you want me to send another email that says, do you want to do away with it, I can contact Ken's office directly and say, I didn't get an answer. Are you guys using it? One county has actually, they don't use the online application. They have created their own. So that was the only person.
And that wasn't Manatee, because I know they've got a
no, that was Randy. Where is Randy? Randy is in Lake County.
Lake County.
Okay.
Yeah, Lake County has done something similar.
Because Manatee has a 3-page application that they require the customer to fill out before they will even begin a transaction with them. So.
And I talked like Columbia. Columbia said we didn't even know there was an application out there. And it was very hard to get to when they tried to look for it.
It's kind of linked through Oasis, so.
Right. If you don't make an appointment, you have to go through about 4 clicks to get to it. But if you're in Oasis, then it's pretty simple to get to.
So direction from the advisory board. What do we want to? We have an ESC meeting next week, by the way. But do we want to have Linda reach back out to Manatee, or what's the feeling of the advisory board?
Well, in modernization, is that one of the things to just do away with the application completely? Is that one of the options?
I mean,
Until we develop a new one that matches?
yeah, I mean, because the question was, I think what we heard was people saying we gotta ask those
Exactly.
questions anyway, and
the
they kind of
customer
like,
gets frustrated, like, why I spend all this time filling this out, and you're just going to ask me everything again.
And we do hear that from customers.
Right.
Because if you read the manual, LIR 14 says you must verify each answer.
Yeah, right.
so is there any benefit to doing it online beforehand?
Not really, because when you're called to go to court, one of the things you're asked is, did you ask the customer every one of these questions, and did you get a response, and what was the response? So I don't think the application meets the legal requirements.
Now, speaking about Manatee, Linda volunteered that she could reach out to them, but your thinking is they have developed their own anyway, so they're not using the one?
I think they're doing both. I think they are using the online, but they're also using their own manual application. Why don't we hold off on that and we can touch base with legal just to see what our legal requirements are. And, you know, if those would meet the legal requirements of asking the questions, if the application would meet, the online application would meet the requirements of asking the questions, then maybe we just need to focus on improving that application with modernization rather than doing away with it at this point.
And I will tell you that one of the emails I received did quote me some Florida statutes. They were very thorough to tell me that Florida statute requires that. So yes, legal would probably be the best call to make that decision.
So I'll add it to our statute.
That's something we need to
analysis and
we will have people at the executive steering committee have people give an opinion on it.
And Linda, can you send those the results that you got?
I can send you each individual email, plus I made just a small little Word document that has, no means we have to ask all the questions. We don't use the application. There are no yeses, and there's an other that means they make their own. But yes, I could forward that or all the emails individually, because the one, like I said, it does quote the Florida statutes versus in regards to the mentally incapacitated statute.
That was your best.
The one with the statute.
322.05 parens 8 is one of them, and then the other one is 97.041 parens 8 as an apple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's send those to Kathleen. You have her email address, and then she can get them to the advisory board members and the folks here on my team, and you can have those for the ESC meeting.
Okay.
That just gives you one person to send it to, and we can distribute it for you.
Do you want me to forward each individual email or just a little spreadsheet?
Both, if you don't mind.
I will.
That way you've got all of it.
Sure enough.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Jessica, you want to give an overview of some of the things that you heard from the examiners and the managers and assistant managers down in South Florida?
Sure. I'll put it over. So the workshop included the following topics for Team 1, we talked about automatically adding and removing restrictions. Team 2 talked about automatically adding and removing endorsements. Team 3 talked about the cashier process, and Team 4 talked about temporary permit transactions. And these are some of the highlights that came out of the workshop. Number 1, require selection of a reason when reprocessing a transaction that was previously voided and only for the same day. So for example, if we're voiding a transaction for a sanction clearance and for some reason somebody voided and reprocessed as a no-fee clearance, then they would have to select the reason of why they're reprocessing that voided transaction. Number 2, interface with David to verify hazmat application has been submitted. So the system would search David by customer BL number and return a confirmation of the submission or advise the user to complete the application before completing the replacement transaction. So if it didn't find a submission through David, then it would just tell the examiner, hey, you haven't completed the application, go do that first and then we can complete this transaction. Number 3, create a drop-down of the temporary permit screen to allow selection from a list of standard reasons for issuance and save with the transaction. Currently, users type in an ad hoc reason. They don't really have a drop-down to have a uniform reason on every temporary permit. So in addition, the remark isn't saved with the customer record. So that's what they want. They want to be able to select the reason from a drop-down menu and have it saved with every transaction for the temporary permit.
Yeah, that you look as if you messed up.
Number 4, add wording to the temporary permit that explicitly states the driver is licensed. So their reason for this one was because they have a lot of customers who get pulled over, and the police officer will tell them, hey, there's nothing on this form that says that your license is valid. And they have the ability to search it, but they still want to be able to have that on there just to make the customer feel better about their temporary permit. Number 5, allow users to enter birth certificate numbers, and the reason for this is to check against certificate numbers that are part of a series that has been identified as stolen or fraudulent. We would have to manage a table that stores bad series numbers by state of issuance. So if we already know, for example, Puerto Rico, they have a whole batch of bad birth certificates, and we have that series number, we can add that to a table, and verify against that table every time. That way we already know these are identified as bad. We don't want to allow the issuance with this one.
Would it stop the issuance then, Jessica?
Yes.
Awesome.
That's a wonderful idea. But can it really be managed?
How often do we get like a series of numbers for bad I-94s or bad birth certificates? I don't think it's that often. It wouldn't be a long list in that table. It would just be a short list, but at least we can.
But you're talking every state. I mean.
Oh, probably not. Well, I don't know. I don't know if we receive information for every state. I think we would have to have more discussion about,
If you
yeah,
got it, then we could put it
right. So the ones that
It's a great idea. Please don't misunderstand me. I just don't want to failure, because once you become dependent on that and they
right, yes,
relying on that and thinking that it's always working,
right.
and the next thing you know, oh well, the person who updated the table got a new job and left, and the tables haven't been updated since 2015,
right,
2023, and oh,
yeah,
we've been using that for the last 7 years. That's my only.
yeah.
I want to make sure that if we're going to do it, it's something we can maintain over a long period of time and keep up to date, because otherwise it's no good.
Right.
And occasionally there's a recovery. Occasionally they'll say a series of something was stolen, and then there's a recovery. So those are, you know, there's a.
Okay.
And for Florida, I'm sure that would be easy. It's when you start talking other 49 states, Puerto Rico, these other places. Now it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. Okay. Number 6, system interface with VA to verify if the customer is an honorably discharged military veteran. So they just wanted to be able to just search their system and say whether it's verified or not, but still allow them, if it's not updated in the VA system, to enter the information manually.
Say that again for me.
Interface with Veterans Affairs to verify if the customer is an honorably discharged military veteran.
Will it only verify the honorable discharge, or will it verify the 100% also?
That's a good question. 100%.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
But then you would still allow, if it did not verify and they had proof, you would still allow that, correct?
Right.
We just have so many veterans that come into our office. They don't typically carry their DD-214 with them.
Right.
So that's just handy. It'd be awesome to do that.
Right. Okay. Number 7, add a prompt at the transaction review screen that reminds users to return documents to the customer. And the reason for this. So I don't even have to say the reason. I think we all know. Number 8, create a new correspondence type for fraud so that users know which customers they have to call the fraud help desk for and which ones only require a DL image validation. Currently, users have to call fraud for all customers with fraud correspondence, and the majority only require the examiner to validate the customer matches an image on file. So I think the only way that we can do that is by breaking it out and having the fraud department enter 2 different correspondence codes, but I think we have to have more conversations with them to make sure that they're okay with this. Number 9, display method of payment on the customer receipt. So just next to wherever they paid, show whether it was cash, credit, or check. And that's for the people that are voiding. Usually the person voiding doesn't know what type of payment was used, and they have to go back to the cashier to ask for the information.
We discussed this one time before in regards to tax collectors that use other cashiering systems. But because I'm not asking the DMV to interface with our cashiering system. What I'm asking is if tax collectors that choose to take credit cards for those payments, if we could enter credit and it's showing the receipt versus us having to put cash, because if you put credit, then it messes up. If you're familiar with that, it assumes we're getting a credit card from DMV. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. I'll take a note of that. Number 10, allow split payment method. Example, allow part payment by cash and part payment by check or credit card. And we've heard that quite a bit All right. And number 11 is a hardware one. It's to allow customers to enter the Social Security number via the signature pad so that they don't have to say the number out loud at the counter. Okay. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Those highlights of the major ones that we were on.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any other discussion around any of these? Because we will present these to ESC as well. We noted, hopefully we noted, what we have recorded, Stephen's comment about one of those, or several ones that we get. So we have that noted, and we will pass it on to ESC as well. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
I do have one more.
Yeah, and on Stephen's note, the challenge with the birth certificates is, you know, it is issued by a state, but a lot of times it's a county, a city, a municipality that falls under. So you would have to have all those options where it drops down, and now you put a state, but you don't. In order to identify it as a stolen, you would have to drill down further to, was it issued by a particular county? Was it issued by a city? Was it issued by a township? Was it issued, because there's about 2,000 different issuers of birth certificates, just U.S. birth certificates.
Okay.
So,
all right.
yeah.
I did have one more that someone brought up, and I didn't have it here on the highlights, but I think it's pretty significant for, it was to allow customers to complete surveys via the signature pad after completing their transactions. And somebody suggested doing it on a separate, maybe a separate computer somewhere away from the counter. That way they can continue to process other customers, or doing it at the cashier randomly, maybe selecting every, 5 customers or whatever the case may be. So that was another one.
Any thoughts on that before it would slow down? I mean,
It would slow down the transaction time, but one of the things we're looking at is with our next generation of queuing system, having something tied to the queuing system where with every transaction it's a separate system that they're tying up the rest of the transaction. The customer can queue it in here at the same time, so they can rate their transaction right there. So. And that way it doesn't tie up the signature pad. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Get the money.
Any other discussion on any of these items that we need to make sure the ESC is aware of before they?
I do have a question on number 6. There are other VA and DoD documents that we require veterans to present and their families to present in order for some transactions. Could we maybe work on a more comprehensive list of what those are, and if we could create tables that would link to them? One particularly sensitive one is Gold Star license plates for service members killed in action. There's actually a DoD document to identify who that soldier was, and then they have to further prove relation to them. Some people have had some unpleasant experiences.
Yeah. I think this one is
wasn't sure.
Specific to DL, an actual driver license transaction, and the one you're talking
Sure
about
is.
motor vehicle.
We are communicating with DoD currently to see what services they offer that we can use electronic verification on. So once we finish this initial paperwork with them, we'll see what it is that they offer, and we'll try to take advantage of any of those that we can to assist with our processes. It's not a PowerPoint. As part of the same South Florida workshop, we also presented, it's open already, to the examiners the current mock-up screens that actually talked about the new functionality that we were going to be offering in the portal. And previously we had talked about, customers will be allowed to create an account, that account can be either created with a username and password, or that they will be able to use one of their Facebook, Google, etc. We talked about the customer profile, things that they will be able to set up as well as part of that account. So this is all what we call wireframing. It's not the actual screen. It's just a depiction of the content of what will be on the screen. So it's all square and not very, very pretty, but just to give an essence of what we plan to provide. So the customer would come in, this would be our initial welcome page. If they're already a member, of course, they would be able to just go ahead, log in, put in their username and password and log in. If they're not a member, they're new to the portal, we'll have something here. We haven't fleshed out the verbiage, any of that stuff here, and they would enroll. If they're enrolling, part of that enrollment process is we want them to be able to identify and verify who they are so that we can then associate them and tie them to their customer record. So this is the verification screen where they'll provide us some information, driver's license number, last 5 of SSN, date of birth, issue date, or license class. For business customers, right now we're talking about having them provide us with a business number that there's some pre-work that businesses will have to do in order to be to access some of the business services that'll be on the portal. Once we receive this information, we are going to search our records, come back and verify, okay, yes, we found this person. They will have to attest that, yes, this is me. And then we're going to ask them some qualifying questions. One of the exercises we had at the workshop was for the examiners and the managers to kind of come back, give us some feedback on what should these qualifying questions be. And we talked about rendering information from the actual driver record. Some of their suggestions were things about, if they received a ticket, if we saw that there was a ticket or something on their record, we can say, have you ever received a ticket in which county, and have a list of counties that have got to choose the right county. Or something like, I think one of the suggestions were the last office that you performed the transaction in for your driver's license issuance transaction, or for various things. The first, when you first issued your license, I think one of them was what state, as far as the birth certificate, what was the state that you issued your birth certificate. So anything that we can pull from the record that that person would have to know or have documentation at their home that they can verify is what we would use to the account. For the business customers as well, part of what we do currently, I think for our record processing, they have to provide us the head of the agency and last name, but those questions we'll still flesh out later on. Once that information has been verified, the customer will get this screen. They'll provide us an email address, and at this point, we will send them an email notification. And inside that email notification will be a link to bring them back to the portal. So it's that two-part verification. And at that point, when they come back to the portal, everything will be set up and accepted, and their account is established and created. We talked about before about having a dashboard and the type of information we would provide on the dashboard, the alerts, current license status, address, and useful links. So this is the current dashboard page on here at the top. Here's customer alerts. So anything that was outstanding or anything that needed attention by the customer, if our records indicate that you have current open sanctions, if your hazmat application status is pending, or we have a list of different things we're going to provide alerts on. And actually, as part of the workshop, they provided or validated our current priority. So there's certain things we want to get at the top of the list that are more critical than the fact that you don't have any emergency contact information on file or things of that nature. So they provided some assistance with that priority as well. Here's your current driver's license status, information. We're showing them the restrictions, their endorsements. In the future, once we develop motor vehicles, that motor vehicle tab will have a list of any vehicles that are associated to that customer. Over here, we have some useful links. We've been meeting with the design team, and there have been some recommendations. Our concern was that this is the content that we want to provide to the customers because of the feedback that we've gotten from the customer service help desk and things of that nature. These are the things that we provide this information. It will reduce some of the phone calls that they currently get. The developers had some concern about the layout of the content, and the concern is that we want this application right now, it is more geared to a desktop, but we realize that a lot of people go on the internet using their phones now. So there's some things they may come back with, whereas it may be more linear and not so much this way. And we told them we're open to those suggestions. We just want to make sure we don't lose any of the value that we presented here as far as content.
Judy, we'll have
They
an
just
alert.
considered maybe a totally separate mobile app.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation about that today with our update from Accenture. We have met with a few vendors as well to talk about, there's one in particular I think came in and talked about the State of Florida app, and then within the State of Florida app there would be HSMV. So I know there were some things that were at one point being discussed downtown about that. We're trying to ensure that we're ready either way. I mean, we're designing this so that the portal basically will use services that the DL application will use as well. So yeah, we have looked at that, having a separate app, and we also are looking at the idea that anything that we do through the portal should also render to a phone or a tablet. And we actually had an update from Accenture today that the tools that we're using have that ability built into them. So we are considering those things.
Thank you.
Was there, in the alerts, is there going to be an alert when a registration is due to be renewed, a driver license is due to be renewed?
So right now we're not addressing anything on the registration part of it because it's in the next phase. But I don't remember if we had an alert that your license is soon to expire. That's something we can add as well.
Definitely.
And in the future, as we move along with this, are we thinking about providing an alert to a person's email address about renewals?
So in here, as part of their profile, the customer can subscribe to electronic notifications. So if they yes, I want to, then they would get an electronic email notice.
I don't want to get into the weeds, but I just can't let it go. Back when you were talking about the registration process, part of this is the curiosity thing. It started my brain going down this path, but then it really isn't. Then you said you're going to get. So I'm registering as a new user of the portal.
Of the portal.
I go and I get him this email that's going to have a link. Right. I'm going to click on that and come back. I mean, I do that at home now on all kinds of different things I subscribe to. But I also know that those sites that I have registered to use, say Amazon, for example, they recognize me when I come back. They know that I'm on that computer. My bank, for example, because they have a higher level of security for online banking, when I bank, they register that device. So then if I try to go on, when I go to if I use another machine to go to their website, so my question is, because we're doing this, emailing them a link and they're clicking on it, and then you said, and then it'll fill out all this stuff, and then we'll ask, so it is going to know that it was that computer?
Not so much the computer.
Here's where I'm going with that. People who use the internet, they have to get over themselves if they don't want that information. It's out there. From a state perspective is, am I now registering that information and tying that information? And when I say that, I mean that person's IP address, their web service, whatever. Are we going to keep that? And if so, is there storage issues and public records issues?
I'm not aware that we're keeping that, and part of that is going to be actually we're purchasing. We've already purchased software to help with the account management. So actually, we're not actually doing that piece. What is it called? Federated ID, but there's the company that we're going to use. So they will actually be managing and verify when you actually log in your password and user ID. They're managing that, and they're just going to send us a token, and that token's associated to your record.
So I will have to ask Chad.
So yeah.
So there's okay. So, and I know you're trying to get an overview.
Yeah. And I'm sure they may be tracking IP addresses as part of their
software to that? I'm not sure.
So the way that works is through cookies. Yes.
Yeah.
So the application will drop a cookie on your laptop, and you can actually disable cookies. So even though they do, so it'll log in every time.
Right. And then that's right. So anyway, just throw it out there that if we were going to have some sort of record of these cookies. You read that. I forgot that.
Yeah, I didn't make that.
You're right. I've seen it. And yes, I know you can disable it and all that kind of stuff. So if I've got chocolate chip associated cookies, and then you get I was thinking of it from public records perspective, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And that's why we.
I mean, with the other.
Yeah. Not want to have to.
Vendors have to keep that too.
Okay.
Yeah, because now
Thank you.
We
have
all
all
right,
that
I've thrown
stuff.
it out there. Do with it what you want.
All right. So,
Makes it a public.
like we stated, driver's license services.
If they're acting for the agency, it's still a public record.
That's what I just said. Yeah. The fact, I'm sorry, the fact that you've outsourced this does not eliminate the need to keep it as a public record. Vendors have to keep public records too. So that means we don't have to keep it, but whoever federated ID still has to keep it, and if a public records request comes in, they still have to keep it.
The public record would be if you had access to the system, or?
Well, right now, when we're saying, depending on the vendor we use, we're not sure what information they're going to.
Correct.
Right. Right.
So until we know,
Whatever it is.
right? Yeah.
Correct.
You're saying whatever information they capture and save, it will be public part of.
Yes. It can be requested.
Right, because as Deb knows and others know, we've had instances in the past where spouses are going in and changing records of other people and all that kind of stuff. So if you get into a situation where, I didn't do that address change, I didn't do that renewal, I didn't do that transaction, I could see someone doing a public records request and saying, what computer came to that website and registered, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So just, again, I came to it from a two points of view, public records request, and secondarily storage. That's just more data that is going to be stored by a vendor, perhaps.
I didn't
mean to get us all off on a rabbit trail.
That's true, but just to make a point, there is some interest in having that information in the fraud unit as well as with WHP. Yeah.
Tying up keys to.
That's correct. That's what we were just saying. Yep.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of conversation, and I want to clarify. Are you saying that this third-party vendor, the information that's going to be provided to them is going to be public record?
Yes, that is current law. Any vendors who have data of mine, the departments, I should say, it is considered a public record.
Okay, so what was the big deal about giving the tax collectors the email information then if it's not public record?
I'm not following your question.
We had an issue. Tax collectors were wanting the email addresses so that we could email driver's license or registration renewals, and there was a question that was that public record or not.
No, and those aren't public. Those are exempt.
Collected by,
those are exempt.
if it is collected by the department, I don't think the law extends. If we collect it, it's available.
And
so
that,
if Linda collects it,
defer.
it would depend on
but
how,
I know
if she's collecting it as an agent of the department,
right.
that might color whether it's available
The
or not.
reason you got, Linda, the response that you got, and the reason y'all got that response was because in 119, as it relates to DHS&V, emails are not considered public record.
As collected by the department.
So that's why you got the answer you got. I was answering from a different perspective that, so for example, I can't, okay, Accenture, they're a vendor here at the table. If someone from the general public does a public records request and they say, well, I want all the modernization documents from highway safety held by Accenture, Accenture would have to give them up.
Right.
That's where I was coming from. But the other issue that's
sticky.
That's a hard.
It's very sticky because why is a third-party vendor allowed to give away information?
Well, not allowed, required. If it is a public record, they have to give it up. But what those emails you're referring to, those email addresses, where the department is saying to you that they are not a public record.
Why are they not a public record when they're supplied to an agent of the DHSMB?
There's a section that talks about
You're
addresses.
going to have to come up here. She can't hear you.
Hold on just a minute, Linda.
Collected by the department if they're a contracted agent.
There's a statute that talks about addresses, and we have a legal opinion that I would be happy to send you. I'd have to pull it up. I don't have it handy. That talks about addresses, email addresses in particular, and I can forward that to you. What we're talking about here is a different thing. It's not specifically about addresses. If they're asking for a document that the department would be required to produce as a public record, then our vendors would have to produce it as a public record as well. That's the point here.
Okay, so if an individual requested from the third-party vendor all that information, including emails, it would be required to be given?
Anything we would have to give would have to be given. If we didn't have to give it, the vendor would not have to give it.
Right, so if a vendor happened to have our emails, and they don't, by the way, so please don't spread that rumor, but if they did, and you requested it of them instead of us, they would still have to tell you no, because it's not a public record if I have it, and it's not a public record if they have it.
Can I just get a black and white answer? If I provide my email address through the portal, through this third-party vendor, is that public record?
No, because emails are not something that's subject to public record. We don't have to provide it.
That's perfect. I was a little confused whenever you were saying all the information that goes to that third-party vendor is public record. Then I'm like, well, that's part of it. So, okay.
Yeah, we shouldn't say all the information. All the information that would be subject to public record. Anything we would have to provide, they would have to provide.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Scared me just a little bit.
Sorry for the confusion. Move on.
All right. So driver's license services that we'll be offering on the portal, renewal, replacement of driver's license ID card, and the ability to downgrade to an ID card. So this is the choose driver license services page. Here are the services for driver's license. They can renew, replace, or reduce without motorcycle endorsement. For identification card, they can renew, replace, or get an original ID card. We will now be asking the questions as it pertains to insulin dependency, organ donor, the veteran designation, if you'd like to have that printed on your card, or the follow-up questions, whether you'd like to receive information. We will also be offering them the ability to submit a voter registration application in the portal. For commercial driver's license services, they will have the ability to do a CDL renewal except for hazmat endorsement, CDL replacement. They can downgrade to a Class E. We have a commercial learner's permit, renewal and replacement, and they can also downgrade to an ID card. This is the CDL services page. There are those CDL options here at the top. The same questions we will be asking them here as well as far as insulin, organ, and veteran designation. We do have an additional question here about do you need to self-certify. CDL drivers will also be able to remove endorsements at the time of renewal. It's only remove.
I have a question on that. I noticed as I was going through some of the other things, it mentioned a bus driver renewing online. It just has the public, non-public school bus driver on there, and it's marked yes on this one. Yeah. Currently, if a customer comes into our office, we're supposed to see proof of that. So is there a double standard there?
No, what we're looking to do currently, we're talking about capturing that information on their record, and we're going to add a question to where they're going to have to attest that, yes, I still do work for blah, 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 and if they say yes, and also we're looking into, there's currently a data exchange that we have with the Department of Education where we provide information back to them, and so we're also looking to use that as part of the verification validation process for those customers.
But they will have to go through some sort of
yes, they will have
validation.
to at some point been verified and validated, yes.
It could only be for renewals.
For renewals, just for renewals, yes.
we just have a lot of retired school bus drivers that want to keep their CDL, and they can't keep it because of the medical, so we run into issues with that.
Okay. For transcripts, we talked about they would be able to purchase 3-year, 7-year, or complete driver transcripts. There will also be the ability for businesses to bulk transcripts. Manually, these are the ones that are provided internally by the Bureau of Records. So here's the transcript page. If you want non-certified, those are the options up top, 3, 7-year complete. They can choose their delivery method, whether they want to print through their own printer, or if they want to receive it by mail. If they wanted to request certified, they have the option as well here to request for certified transcripts. Other drivers, this is where you can request a transcript for a different driver, not your own. And so here's the information you would have to provide us at the top. And you can still have the same options, the 3, 7-year complete, certified as well. And like we said, when you're requesting a different driver's transcript, you get the driver history minus the redacted personal information.
I'm about tired of beating this horse.
Subscription monitoring, we talked about, where you can monitor your driver record or monitor your minor child's driver record, or a business can monitor an employee. Here's the page to which they can subscribe. So we talked about subscribing for electronic notices. Here's where you can subscribe and say, yes, I'd like to receive electronic notices for my renewal of driver's license, parking permit, motor vehicles, etc., whatever in the future. If you want to monitor your own driver record, you can subscribe. In this particular instance, I had them unsubscribe because they were already subscribed. So this is where you would come to initiate that process.
Judy, a question on that. When the minor turns 18, does that terminate?
Yes, the system
Okay.
will. Yes.
Okay.
It's going to verify it at the point. Say it was already set up, but if they came in 2 days after the minor turned 18, that's one of the things one of the edits in the background that we check and say they're no longer a minor, and the subscription would be terminated. Bar hearings. So one of the features in the portal that you would be able to request and pay for bar hearings of hardship, formal, informal, show cause, and a request for eligibility review. Those hearing requests would be requested and paid for online, and then there would be an entry put into the bar hearing work queue where the hearing officers would then come in, see the information, call the customer, and actually schedule the hearing. At the workshop, we got quite a bit of pushback on this. They thought that the rules behind determining if someone is eligible for a formal hearing or informal hearing, that there are a lot of working pieces, and they didn't think that the system could determine that based on what's on the record. I think there was one of the requirements was that a certain correspondence had to be on the record, and that correspondence doesn't get placed until they receive the packet from law enforcement, and law enforcement is supposed to deliver that packet within, I think it's 5 days, and they say they never get it within the 5 days. So out of all the discussion we had on that, I had talked to Terrence about maybe we need to have a bar-type workshop where we really talk about this, because there's some information. We did talk with some people internal, but as always, it's the people who do it every day out there. They're the ones that see all these different scenarios that pop up. So I think we're going to try to schedule something there.
I think the answer is it'll work for some people and it won't work for others. If the correspondence is not there that says they're eligible, then it just won't let them schedule.
So this is the actual information the customer would submit and fill out to request a hearing on this screen. This is the hearing request queue that the hearing officer will see in their office. They'd have the ability to search by hearing type, the status, or hearing location. So if I was in the, I don't know, Fort Lauderdale office, I can come in, put in that search criteria, and see all the requests that are pending for my office. And go ahead and assign the hearing. Other services, citation inquiries, we talked about them being able to update emergency contact information. The customer will be able to view all transaction activity, whether it occurred in the portal or in a field office. They'll also be able to clear sanctions online, certain sanctions. They will be able to pay reinstatement fees, update insurance information, driver school, and notice of non-ownership. So it's the citation inquiry screen where we'll show them the information on the citation. If that citation is linked to a suspension, there's a link that they can click and go over and see the full details of that. The emergency contact page, which kind of looks similar to the current contact that we currently have on the internet. The sanction inquiry screen. So on this particular record, if these are the sanctions, and for each sanction, it tells you whether or not everybody will have instructions that can tell you what it is you need to do to clear the sanction. If that sanction requires submission of new insurance, there will be a link here for them to select to provide updated insurance information, or if it required them, or if they had the ability to submit a non-ownership affidavit, they could submit that here as well.
Just real quick on that one. The instructions, I would assume, because of the way, I'm only saying this because of the way it's laid out on that screen. The instructions are for each individual sanction separately.
Yes.
If it's a second FR7, or I shouldn't say that, if it's a resuspension for the same FR7, will it require them to come into the office then?
Resuspension for the same FR7. So
I have an FR7. I have an FR7, and I go in and put the insurance information in, and that insurance information gets denied. Will it allow them to go in and do it again, or will they have to come into an office at that point?
If the insurance is denied, what you saying?
Yes.
You can't submit the same information twice. So if it comes, we will accept the insurance as is, just like we do right now, and there's a back-end process that does the verification. If it comes back invalid, then we will resuspend you. However, we had a meeting last week. We're looking into doing, maybe possibly, not sure, if we do true online verification of insurance information, we would know it right then, and we wouldn't go through with clearing them. We would say your insurance is not accepted. Provide different information. Right. So that's what we'd like to do.
My only thing about the instruction sheet is you may have customers who click, of course, I mean, if they read it, they should know, but that instruction only goes with that thing, and that it's not an instruction for the entire thing.
Right. Be nice if you could merge all your FRs together.
So we've had
that would be hard.
Conversations about that, and we actually, our take on it was that we're going to provide whatever is currently being provided, because we didn't want to give separate answers. So however they're going to do it in the field for their instruction sheet, and whatever information we talked about, which comes out of the batch process that actually, since that initial thing, we actually talked about just creating that, but we're still discussing.
Oh, it's a tough nut. I don't.
Yeah.
And right now in the field, all the sanctions come together, and the fees aren't necessarily correct.
Fees are hard too.
And then the FRs.
Yeah.
Separate.
Sanction fee confirmation. So if those sanctions they selected, there were reinstatement fees. Once they selected to pay it, it comes to this screen and shows the breakdown of the fees. Here you'll see that some of the fees are waived because based on what you selected, by paying the reinstatement for one, it covers others. So they would then see the total amount that's required to satisfy and clear these sanctions. Those are all the screens.
Okay. Any other questions before we get to the last?
There was one other concern. There was the ability for the parental withdrawal to withdraw parental consent. they weren't in favor of that, and part of that they were saying because in one example there were siblings who were arguing, and they state that every child knows their parents' login and password, and they can log in and they're mad at the sister and withdraw and cancel it and what have you. So that was one of their concerns. But the other concern had to do with at what point is the parent obligation release or not liable? Is it at the point they submit the withdrawal, or is it at the 2 weeks later when the cancellation is done? Where does their financial obligation go?
Not until that driving privilege is canceled.
Not until
The parent's responsible until the driving privilege is canceled.
Okay, so that's one of the things they kind of wanted us, if that was the case, to make sure we clearly stated that on the screen so that they realize that.
Last agenda item, there's been a lot of talk earlier today. You know that we have one efficiency that's still open, and Gary talked to you about organizational change management, a big part of what we'll have to accomplish with Motorist Modernization. I participate on a working group with AMBA of other states. AMBA's trying to put together a best practices document for system modernization, and one of the things that comes up consistently is organizational change management, impact on the organization, how people sometimes forget about this. And Gary, of course, put that on our radar with the deficiency. So we are addressing that now, and so Samadi and Kim will have a update for you now on what we're doing, and that's our last agenda item for today.
And we will make it really quick. The first thing that I want to do is I just want to reach back and make sure that we share with you the approved key messages for the Motorist Modernization Program. These key messages were drafted the last time we met. 2 days after we met, the Executive Steering Committee met, and they approved these key messages. These are included in the packet that you have, but they're not in the book. So just to go over them very quickly, we are trying to modernize driver license and vehicle registration systems to serve for this growing population without growing government. We are unifying driver license and vehicle registration systems to simplify office visits. We are expanding online tools to let citizens access more services whenever and wherever they want. We are striving to provide law enforcement better driver vehicle information to increase public safety. We are striving to continue improving driver license and motor vehicle data security to keep citizens' information safe. And finally, we also strive to enhance employee tools and work processes to strengthen the focus on customers and outcomes. So please, as you go forward and share the information about the Motorist Modernization efforts, please remember to reach back and use these key messages as they're appropriate. So, we just wanted to update you on our progress. First of all, the communication strategy and plan was approved on October 29th. We're really happy about that. We have initiated the process of reaching out to the tax collectors to engage in a focus group. The communication is going through the approval process right now, so hopefully we'll have a date the next time we meet. We're also, and we mentioned this the last meeting, Motorist Modernization update is being planned for General Headquarters. The date was originally going to be in November. However, due to logistical concerns, we had to move it back to December 7th. So the Orion rollout will occur during that update. Organizational analysis, this on November 3rd, and it'll be due on December 3rd. So that's what we're working on right now. And the outcomes and findings that Kim and I are working with the business analysts senior business analysts and select other stakeholders in the process, is going to inform the training and performance support strategy, which will be launched at the end of 11. And just to specify, so that's dealing with more of the objectives, the curriculum, the support strategy, the tools that people will need to make sure that they can be successful as we change the job slightly, hopefully. And so the first step that we embark on in analyzing the organization from a change management point of view is to make sure that we know what we're trying to do is to provide a gap analysis of the end user group's current and future work environment to test their knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then based on that gap, then we'll be able to build a plan to support their success. So there are four, and I regret the word business, there are four key solution areas really that we're focusing on for this. And this was really to break the process of drilling down to that key information or to that specific information down into more manageable chunks. We broke it out into the solution areas of the portal, the process that's going to replace DL issuance, the citations processing process, and then something that, for lack of a better term, we've identified as the back-end operations. This includes everything from SIDLIS to, I don't know, the
FR. It also just kind of the initial development that highway safety employees will be doing, as well as the maintenance, right? So recognizing them as a system user too.
In fact, why don't I take this opportunity to hand this off to Kim Kogel, who is doing a fantastic job, very detailed, and couldn't be prouder of you working with her.
Very sweet. And Karen, I think we're going to keep you good on getting
everything to try to beat my We can drag this out.
Well, right. Build up where Samadi started. So we have tried to break down that solution into four key areas, but really the focus of what we're trying to get to with the organizational analysis is understanding what are the big gaps, what are the big things that are going to be changing, so to really make sure that we're understanding who the impacted system users are along the way. And when we say system users, we mean internal and external. And I know I jumped in a bit there, but on back-end systems, but I think one of the core audiences that we want to make sure we are including are highway safety. There's a lot that's going to be changing in terms of technology and tools they may be using. We want to make sure that we're thinking about those skills, those tasks, those functions of their job that they're going to do not only to do this initial development, but the long-term maintenance as well, right? So I think the beauty of doing this organizational assessment when we are is that highway safety is really setting themselves up for success in terms of allowing for the right lead time to make sure that we're thinking of all these things, and so that when it's time to turn around and do the training and performance support strategy, we thought about it, right? You're doing the best you can, right? So right now and this is just a sample up here, but essentially what we're doing is we're meeting with the senior business analysts, we're meeting with folks on the business and technical side, we're going to be coordinating with the learning and development office as well. And when I say we're doing the best we can, meaning to say, okay guys, let's look at the solution, let's think of all the system users, internal and external, that will be impacted. And across the top of this spreadsheet, the sample spreadsheet you see here, are all the big areas within that function. So, for example, within this DL issuance area, driver inquiry. Well, who's that impacting from a system user perspective? And do we have the comprehensive list of users? And the more discussion we have, the more meetings we have, it helps to tweak that list and refine that list and make sure that we are thinking of all of those users that are impacted. What we try to do as we go across the different areas is understand, is there a level of impact? And if we understand the details, is it high, medium, or low? What this does is it at least indicates, yes, there will be some level of impact for this user group. And then as we get further down the path, as we start to build out training and training modules and things like that, that's when we'll get into the details of, this is exactly how it's changing. This is, what the new screen will look like, what the new process will be. But right up front, we may only know at this point in time, as we're getting requirements validated and things like that, that yes, there is an impact. Down the road, we'll be able to better define what that impact is. But at least now we're identifying that this is an audience that we should be considering, thinking about, and focused on as we develop training down the road. So as part of those discussions that we're having, and again, this body highlighted this, but what we're trying to dig into is the level of impact, but specifically, if we know them, what are those tasks that we need to consider? Are there new knowledge, skills, abilities, technology, hardware that they'll have to use? And the end goal of that is to then take those details and summarize them into a gap analysis, where essentially it'll be a spreadsheet that can list the business area, and then focus on, this is what the current state is, this is what the future state is intended to be, and here's the gap category. And when I say gap category, it would mean, like, how do we address that gap? Is it through training? Is it through possibly a readiness activity, implementation? Is it possibly a position description consideration we need to think about? But again, having this lead time to think about this and do this analysis will let us at least make that initial assessment and then start having the right discussions with folks as well. So in terms of next steps there, it's really to complete this organizational analysis, which we are right in the midst of right now, having a lot of good discussions, get the acceptance, and then begin work on that training and performance support strategy. Yes.
What kind of timeline do you have on this?
So the deliverable itself is due December 3rd. So right now we're at the point where we've been meeting and having the initial discussions. We've actually gotten through a first pass of discussions with teams and with some other folks where we've at least indicated that there's some level of impact by group. So we've done that initial review, but now we're starting another round of discussions to better understand this impact.
Okay. When you get to clerks, because don't have a lot of time until December 3rd.
Okay.
Make sure and let us know, because I think we're pretty key in the citation processing aspect.
Absolutely.
And that, even though that's sort of your third key business area, it's a pretty major one.
Mm-hmm.
So just
and for that specific area, the one area we've been focusing on is understanding, like, data exchange and file formats and how that information goes back and forth. So you will absolutely, as we have this next round of discussions, be sure to meet with you.
And I have a question. Is the customer service, the call center, been brought into it? Because just looking at the portal, that brings in a whole different skill set, because the calls we're going to be getting are, I'm not seeing it right, or there's something on my record, or I've locked myself out, or, different web browsers. It brings into a whole different skill set than what we have right now.
Absolutely, and I'm smiling when Judy and Samadi and I met about this. There was just yeses across the board for every area. And I think customer service is a really good example of groups that not only will they have to have some level of awareness of all the new stuff that's going in, but also just within their processes of peer escalation, and triaging. So when do I, bump this up to the next level, or which group is this going to? So, yes, we've absolutely accounted for them in the system users, and then we've scheduled sessions with Desi and some other folks to get to that next level of detail there too.
And accounting.
Accounting, I will make sure to add this.
Because they can always consider back in. They just are. Right.
No compliments to you or anything.
No, we're always back in.
Just back in.
The money comes in, and then we have to
if anybody's got questions or even after this discussion, you reach out to Samadi and she might put us together to walk through a specific area, because I know this has been a quick overview, but we're absolutely happy to get insight and perspective.
You guys started to strategize about communication campaigns to the DMV customers?
Have not started the campaign yet, but that is on our radar.
You may very well want to take a look at lessons learned from Project Connect. Because, they had some significant things that they had to work through from a customer perspective that touched upon the help desk and things like that. They didn't anticipate all the calls that they were getting from customers. So they had some problems with the back end.
Back over to you.
I think they have more questions.
Oh,
Two more.
30
I'm in your corner, Karen.
Thank you.
I'm good.
I think this is a detailed spreadsheet.
Anybody in the back have questions?
No.
No.
So, and Linda, we are, as they mentioned, we're working on the a letter to go to Eric, and we're copying you. So it's going to review here. So we'll get a copy of that. We'll talk about the focus groups. Actually, there are going to be 3 focus groups. We're going to work with tax collectors. We're asking for like 7 people, a max of 7 people for each focus group. And we're going to look at having the initial meeting. We're going to require that everyone be present. We'll hopefully have that somewhere in Central Florida. After that, of course, we could have people attend virtually using GoToMeeting or some other form of virtual type communication.
Is that going to be a different group than what Scott Bean is doing?
Yeah, totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a totally different issue.
Good, I get one more committee.
And on Tuesday next week, the 17th, I guess I will be going before the TED committee out of the House to give an update on Motorist Modernization and be questioned about where we are. So that will be Tuesday of next week. So hopefully all that goes well. I think we have a good story to tell. The work that we've done on the deficiencies, and we have IBNB. We also have AST that's also watching. Have a governance structure set up, and I think a lot of those things are things that Gary pointed out with the project early on that we've been able to address. So I feel comfortable about going down talking about where we are with the project. But of course, I don't know. I'm planning to give examples of things we plan to do with the system. So hopefully all of that goes well. So that'll be next Tuesday afternoon unless something changes. So we went down. I went down 2-3 times with Terry and some other folks to meet with the governor's office about the project, trying to make sure we hopefully are included in the governor's recommendations for the project. I think finally, after several discussions of return on investment, we thought we were good, but apparently it wasn't enough. So we came back and had numerous other discussions thanks to Carl crunching numbers. I got an email from Terry on Saturday, along with some other folks got the email as well, that they had briefed the governor. He was pleased with where we were with our return on investment. So hopefully that's good news for the project as far as being in the governor's recommendations moving forward. So now we will of course have to concentrate on the House and the Senate, and that going before the committee on Tuesday is the first step in that. So, all right. If there's nothing else, meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to check it. We'll give her a copy. I'll talk to Kevin.